Hello there and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And as you know, I enjoy helping you gentlemen in answering any questions on style or any of the topics which we cover here on the channel. And I have received a question about wristwatches, and it's from Joss Rubinton, who says, I'd like to hear your thoughts on two-tone watches. I really love the Rolex Bluesy, the two-tone Submariner, but I am anxious about adding it to my collection due to my age. I'm in my early 30s and wouldn't want the watch to work against me when meeting others. What are your thoughts on who should wear a two-tone watch? And of course that is an interesting question, and one which made me delve into my own mind about what makes people be attracted to a two-tone watch. And, why would you not want a two-tone watch? And I'm wearing one myself, actually, just to sort of prove the point. I'm wearing my Rolex GMT Master 2, which is a gold and stainless steel piece. So, clearly, I like two-tones, but what drew me to it? Now, just so we are clear, when I say a two-tone watch is generally a watch which was made of a combination of two metals. Normally stainless steel and normally gold of some kind, be it yellow gold or rose gold. But that's what we're talking about when we say a two-tone watch. Now, as ever, when we're talking about an item of style, it's good to know where it came from. What's its origin story? And as far as I can determine with the research I've done, the two-tone watch really became something in our lexicon of horological sort of world in 1945, when Rolex brought out the Datejust. And that's when the two-tone watch really, I don't know if it was around before that, but that's when it really started being used and worn by people with any regularity. Now, of course, over this time, all of the other major brands from Switzerland and elsewhere have always had, or have had at some point, a gold and stainless steel combination watch in their collection. And I mean all of them, from Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, Breitling, Omega, Cartier, of course, they have all gone for the two-tone at some point. But I think it would be absolutely fair to say that the zenith for the two-tone watch came in the 1980s. And I can vividly remember it, to be honest, because it was a time, and the reason I remember it is because I was growing up in that era. I was born in 1970, so I was coming of age between 80 and 90. I turned 18 in 1988, right in the middle of that decade. And I remember the two-tone Rolex Datejust particularly being this symbolic watch of the wealthy, the yuppie, the people who liked to demonstrate money by the wristwatches that they wore. And, that little glint of gold on the wrist was something which really played into the favour of the 80s, because it was a time of conspicuous wealth, where it was important for people to display their success. And for men, the 80s are sort of symbolic of that period of city traders and entrepreneurs who, showed off their wealth by driving the Porsches and the Ferraris. They wore very sharp bespoke suits with padded shoulders to give them this imposing silhouette. And of course, on their wrist was the Rolex Datejust two-tone. That classic watch, it was worn by the celebrities of that era, and I remember, to name but a few who struck my mind, I remember Sonny Crockett on Miami Vice occasionally sported a two-tone Datejust amongst many of the other watches which he wore in that role. And the main lead character in the film version of American Psycho, was also somebody who famously wore the two-tone Datejust. And it was just something which was so symbolic of that period. The yuppies, the young, upwardly mobile people, as they were called, almost always on the wrist was that two-tone Datejust. And that's probably why we're left with this negative sort of philosophy around the two-tone watch in the modern era, why it's not very attractive. But naturally, I think, as the 80s faded away and that ostentatious, conspicuous wealth period sort of disappeared into the rearview mirror, we entered the 90s and the noughties. And this is where stealth wealth became far more the style of its time. You know, stealth wealth was really about being perhaps equally as wealthy as you were in the 80s, but not allowing it to be visible. People would not know you were a millionaire or a billionaire merely by looking at you. You hid your wealth very stylishly. And around that time, the fashion for two-tone watches and even full gold watches sort of abated, and we saw this drive towards stainless steel pieces, utility, very functional watches. The sports watch started to become more popular, and the Datejust started to lose some of its popularity. And of course, that Datejust two-tone soon became a thing of the past as more and more people sort of went towards stainless steel as their wristwatch of choice because of stealth wealth. And of course, in short order, you found it almost impossible to find a stainless steel watch, and those watches that we saw in all the shop windows of the authorised dealers, the jewellery stores, were almost always the two-tones. Those were the watches which had gone out of favour, which were in the window. They were absolutely overshadowed by the desire to have stainless steel. However, there absolutely has been something of a comeback taking place for the two-tone watch in recent times, and I've witnessed that over the last 5 years or so. I've been a part of it over the past 5 years or so. You know, I've got one on my wrist right now, and it was my first choice for a watch. It wasn't a watch I elected to buy because I couldn't find the stainless steel. I've actually got a stainless steel version of this watch, but one of my preferences is the two-tone for the reasons that we're about to talk about. But definitely a renaissance started to take place, and for some very good reasons. I think initially people started coming back to two-tone gold steel watches because of availability, because of that, huge overshadowing of the watch market towards stainless steel. The ones that you could find were two-tones, and absolutely there were some people who were desperate to buy maybe a Rolex, maybe something else, and the watch which was in the window, which they could get their hands on, was the two-tone, so they went for the two-tone. Another reason is nostalgia, because I think a lot of people harken back to the 1980s, and it is a period in many people's memories, my own particularly, of a very exciting time. A time where fashions were at the extreme, where things were very different to the way they are today, in the way that we show our style, the way that we demonstrate things, like our wristwatches. And a lot of people like that. And of course, those people of my age, we've got the nostalgia, we remember the charisma of the two-tone watches, particularly the Datejust from that era. And yes, I would absolutely be drawn to one for that reason. There's also the versatility of a two-tone watch, because like it or not, some people will say they would never wear gold, but it is actually a very versatile watch type to have. Because if you're wearing a steel sports watch, a utility piece for instance, it's not really something that you can wear with a suit or in a more formal situation. It's a working piece, in essence, although they're not really that today, but it is a watch which is designed as a tool watch, as the expression is. And, you wouldn't really want to pair that with a more formal outfit. However, by adding the gold to your watch in the shape of a two-tone, you are adding an element of formality and, an element, of versatility to the way that your watch can be worn. It can be worn day to day in normal life like I am now, or you add that little bit of gold to your watch and yes, it makes it something which is flexible, can be worn with a suit. And perhaps on a more practical front, one reason why people choose two-tone, and I'm going to put myself in this category here, is it's a damn sight cheaper than full gold. Now, I have to be honest with you, I love gold. I would have a full gold watch with a drop of a hat. Yeah, I love them. There's something about gold, that primeval sense of that impermeable, that metal which will be on the planet for the duration of the lifetime of the planet. Gold is not something which is created like steel. It's something that's always been on the planet and it'll exist till the end of time. That's what gold is. It's on that periodic table. It's a thing in its own right. And I love it. But I can't afford a full gold watch. But I can just about squeak to a two-tone because it gives me a fair element of the ownership experience of gold. There's enough gold on there to make it look gold, yet still it's a good portion cheaper. So there is that to it as well. And let's not forget, when it comes to the renaissance of the two-tone watch, as people say, style is cyclical. If you buy an item of clothing and you own it for long enough and it's in style when you buy it, it'll come all the way around and it'll come back into fashion again. Now, it doesn't work for everything. I'm pleased to say that trousers like flares have yet to achieve that renaissance, but certainly when it comes to wristwatches, we have seen many watches become stylish again. And I think that is what's happening when it comes to two-tones. Yes, it is about availability. Yes, it is about nostalgia and versatility for the watch. But they were fashionable in the 80s, and many of the things in the 80s are coming around again. Now, of course, we're seeing more and more brands latching onto this. We're seeing brands like Tudor, for instance. They're introducing more steel and gold versions into their catalogue every year. They've got a steel and gold chronograph. Last year, they introduced a steel and gold GMT model, a Black Bay GMT. And, I dare say that we will see more of the brands introducing those steel and gold varieties in the years ahead. But the one brand which has never bailed out of the steel and gold versions is Rolex. Throughout all of these times when other brands were retiring their steel gold versions or shelving them off into the archives, Rolex never lost faith. They continued to make steel gold versions of many of the models that they have in their collection year after year after year, even though they weren't particularly desirable. And even as recently as the last couple of years, we've seen watches which were dyed in the wool, stainless steel only, like the Explorer 1. Recently, it's been introduced in a steel gold variety, a two-tone version. Now, I could never have seen that coming because of all of the utility watches in the Rolex catalogue. You would have thought that the Explorer 1 was absolutely safe from ever being thought of as a gold piece. But no. Rolex shocked us all. A couple of years ago, they brought out a two-tone Explorer, and it's been a success. People have been buying into that watch in considerable numbers. So it all sort of shows us that this renaissance is taking place. The big brands, Rolex, the biggest brand of all, they are continuing to introduce steel gold versions, two-tone watches, and people are buying them in their numbers. So let's absolutely embrace the two-tone. Now, Josh's question was about the bluesy, or in other words, to give it its real name, it's the Rolex Submariner date model with the blue dial, the blue ceramic bezel, and it's made of steel and gold. And the crown of the watch, the bezel surrounding, and the inner links on that oyster bracelet are all made of yellow gold. And it's quite a spectacular watch. And of course, it's spectacular for one reason as well. The Submariner is one of the most iconic watches in the horological world. It can easily be traced back as the origin source for this absolute fascination with dive watches, which all people seem to have in this modern era. And of course, once that became sort of emblematic of the Rolex brand, the Submariner is very much the poster boy of Rolex. We saw them introducing the steel gold version and the full gold version and the white gold version. They've really explored every avenue on that Submariner. But one of the most beautiful of all, I think, is the bluesy, as they call the blue dial Submariner, and for a number of reasons. It's the iconic watch, yes it is. Whilst they also make a black dial version, the blue dial version absolutely pops with colour. That radiance of the shimmer of the dial, the sort of sunburst dial, is beautiful. You add that to the blue ceramic insert of the bezel and the yellow gold of, you know, the bezel itself, the crown and the bracelet. It just is absolutely glorious. For me, it looks velvety and smooth, and it's one of my favourite Rolexes of all time. And of course, it also has the advantage that that blue dial on the Submariner is only available in the two-tone and the full gold version. So when you see that blue dial on a sub, the first thing that comes to my mind is beautiful and wealth and money and gold, you know. So it does actually, it is a statement piece for sure, but I think that the bluesy I mean, I love blue, and I have a blue dial Datejust myself. I absolutely adore it, and I think it is one of the most spectacular colour combos. That gold, that stainless steel, and that blue dial and bezel, it just works for me. Now, of course, gold equals money, whichever way you look at it. And there's going to be a premium to pay for having the two-tone over the standard Submariner. Now, at the present time, when I filmed this in early 2022, there's just been a price rise for Rolex. Let me just glance down. The current price of the Rolex Submariner in stainless steel, date version, is £8,650. However, you throw a bit of gold into that, and that price becomes £13,150. And to do a bit of mathematics, that means that the steel gold version, the two-tone, is 41% more expensive than your basic stainless steel model. It's exactly the same watch in every way. The innards, the guts of the watch are the same. All of its specifications are the same. It's just the addition of a more colourful dial, a bezel insert, and also the gold, the important thing of all. So there is quite a price premium. And the juxtaposition, of course, is that because of the overwhelming desire for stainless steel, if you wanted to buy a stainless steel watch on the second-hand market, or the grey market as they call it, you'd probably pay about the same price as you would for a two-tone version. So it's absolutely nuts to my mind that somebody seeking to buy a second-hand stainless steel would pay somewhere near the price of a watch that you could get with gold as one of its principal components. So it's a strange old time that we live in. So the question which Josh has asked me is, what's my view on the two-tone watch, the two-tone bluesy? And it's very hard for me to answer, isn't it? You know, I can tell you what I think, but it's all about you, because like anything that you wear on your person, which is a part of your life, it's all about the aesthetics and what that does for you. Now, I can tell you that I chose my two-tone watch because I love the look of it. I love the colour combination of the rose gold in my particular watch and the coloured bezel. There's brown and there's black in the bezel, and it really sings to me as a watch which I wear in the cooler times of year. It's an autumnal watch for sure. And you know, and the other thing is, of course, as I've said, I love gold, but I can't afford a full gold version, so I went half gold in effect. So for you, Josh, if you love that bluesy, if it sings out to you, it doesn't matter about your age. If it's an expression of your personality and how you feel and how you want to demonstrate your style to the world, I think you should go for it. Don't worry about the impact that it will have on other people. For sure, the impact I will tell you that will happen is that people will compliment you. They will appreciate that watch because it is a very powerful watch to look at. You know, there's a lot of colours going on there. You've got the gold, you've got the fact it's a Rolex Submariner for a start, and then you've got that shimmering radiance of the blue dial, which is so gorgeous. So go with your gut feeling, you know, go with your sense. If you love that watch, try and put one on your wrist. It's not going to be cheap, but it's a watch, I think, which you can wear in perpetuity. I don't think they're ever going to go out of style. I don't think nobody's ever going to look down their nose at a two-tone Rolex. They're always going to be beautiful and they're always going to look good. So buy with confidence. So there we go. I hope that answered your question, Josh. And I hope those of you who have interest in two-tone watches have found some value in today's video. If you have, I would encourage you to give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like this, subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, You can buy me a coffee, or you can join me as a Patreon, and we will find additional material available to you as a Patreon supporter as we go forward. And all of the links on how to engage in that channel support are in the show notes below. So until the next time, wear your watch with pride and with passion, with style and panache, and you will never go wrong. So until the next time, take care, and I will see you again very soon.